Hello, in this video I'll be showing you my Axis and Allies game pieces for my Free French Forces. These could also be used on games such as Memoir 44 or Global War. So what I try and do with these pieces again is I try and make them as historically accurate as possible, both in paint scheme and in composition of the forces. However, with a board full of little pieces, there's always little elements that I try to do to keep them distinctly recognizable as a one team. So in this case, you see that just about every piece, in fact every piece in front of you, has the French roundel for ease of identification on the game board. Otherwise, they look a lot like my Finnish forces. The Finnish forces have the blue swastika, the Nordic cross on it, but not all the pieces there are marked. But if I didn't have them marked, their paint scheme is very similar to the French, as were many paint schemes in the time. So that's part of the challenge, is keeping the historical accuracy while also giving them the unique elements for the player, and that kind of makes it fun. So without further ado, we'll move on. We'll start with the Air Force. So once again, like I said, I try and use actual pieces that were used during the war. Right now, what I have is a kind of a hodgepodge of different pieces. I'm kind of waiting for Historical Board Gaming to have their new French set in stock, and obviously that'll build on this army. That's why this army is fairly small. You don't see a navy, and a lot of the pieces besides the tanks are kind of on loan from other countries. But first off, we have our Spitfire. The British actually did let the Free French use some of their Spitfires. Now the decals I got from Historical Board Gaming. I got the little marking on the side. That's actually a tank marking, but they look pretty good on the aircraft, so I kept that going. Next up, we have the Italian fighter, the C-202, and right now I'm using this to replicate the French D-520 fighter. It looks similar, though more the historical people will call me out saying that what the heck am I doing, but it looks pretty good. Once again, all the decals here are from Historical Board Gaming. All the pieces in front of you I bought from their site. These pieces here are actually Europe 1940-41 game pieces, and this here is the biplanes are Axis and Allies 1940 pieces. Next up, we have the MiG-3. Once again, the French did have some of these in stock, and they fought with their Air Force. Again, I used some Historical Board Gaming tank numbers on the side there, but it does its job pretty well. It looks pretty good, I think, if I can get that in focus. Let's see. There you go. I enjoyed it. It looks pretty good. And finally, we have the biplanes. Like I said, this is actually a Axis and Allies 1914 piece, but I'm using them right now as my bombers until I'm able to get actual French pieces once they come in stock on the website. We need focus. There we go. Better focus there. And now we'll move on to the infantry. So here I have actual pieces that were built as French. These are from Axis and Allies, Europe 40-41. Again, trying to paint them historically. Just a lot of browns and some silver for the weapons. I try to do kind of a brass looking brown helmet. Just the research pictures I could find, it looked kind of like it was a metallic sheen. And again, as I start building more armies, more and more of the pieces will start looking the same. So I just added the roundel there for ease of identifying it on the game board. Next, we'll pull up our trucks. These are actually Historical Board Gaming specials. This is their Polish truck, just a general truck. This piece doesn't actually come with any of the games. It's one of the site's actually their own piece. Got it in blue, as you can see. I like to leave the bottoms the original color just so I can kind of see what they used to be like, and also there's no need to paint the bottom when they're put on the board. So these can be used as, depending on what your house rules are, you can use these as motorized infantry, you can use them as supply trucks, pretty much whatever the house rules state. It's still just a fun little piece to have on the board. Next I'll move on to the artillery. Again, I couldn't find specific French artillery. This is actually a Russian artillery piece, a 152 millimeter. Got this off of Historical Board Gaming as well. This is actually a game piece from Europe 4041 again. And it looks a lot like my Finnish artillery, so that's why I actually have the French roundel on there. Trying to get it in focus here. There we go. A good looking piece though. And now we'll move over to the tanks. First up is the French ARL 44. This tank actually didn't fight in World War II. It was developed by the French while under occupation in secret. So after the war it was introduced into the French army to replace their Panther tanks. But still, it's a very unique French piece for most people who know some history. So it's, for those of you who play the board game and like the historical accuracy, you'll know that this is definitely a French tank. The decals, once again, are all Historical Board Gaming products. They're a little big, but you are able to squeeze them into some of the historically accurate spots, like on the back of the turret or on the side. And there wasn't a huge standard between the various different tank elements of the French army. The tanks came out of the factory pre-painted, and so the spades, hearts, diamonds, clubs, the playing cards was how they delineated platoons, colors, and then companies. So you're able to get them in some of the historically accurate spot. For the FT-17, they could either be on the back end like you see here or on the turret. These decals are just a little too big to stick them on the turret unless you want to sacrifice the roundel and put it somewhere else. Again, both of these tank pieces are Historical Board Gaming specific, products. They're actually 3D printed, so the detail on them is extremely high, and it was actually a real treat to have them come in and see all that detail on them. It made them really fun to paint because you really just wanted to make some of that detail pop out. I'm not sure if this camera can do these pieces justice. And then the paint just kind of falls where it needs to, like the tracks just are made such that the silver and steel colors fall on them. It's really easy to touch up, and the pieces end up looking really good. I use a lot of old brushes, so I'm not the best at high detail, but for my level of skill I was pretty happy. So there it is. That's my French army. Again, I'm still waiting to make it more authentic with actual French pieces once HBG comes out with their French set. Looking forward to that, and I'll definitely have an update to this army then. Besides that, if you're into the hobby too, let me know some tips, some techniques. Also, what army should I try and build next? I've got several that I'm looking at, and if you think one would be particularly fun to, do the research to build the task force and then find the paint schemes, just leave your comments below.